We're going to get going, everybody. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll, please, Amy.
Mr. Anise?
Present.
Mr. Hova? Mr. Brodsky?
Here.
Mr. Coyne?
Present.
Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Haskell?
Here.
Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Mutolo? And Ms. Cesny?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. You have the May 15, 2023 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Thank you, Denny. Second. Thanks, Rich. Any comments, concerns, questions? All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. BST audit for 2022.
Yes.
Jim?
Hello, everyone. With us today is Brendan Kennedy. He's the one of the partners at BST out of Albany, New York. We just had an audit committee meeting and we went through the audit in more detail than we will hear tonight, but he's going to give a summary of our audit, and I believe you have the audit reports in front of you if you want to take a look at them. But I think just going through his PowerPoint real quickly, he's going to just walk you through everything.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, again, my name is Brendan Kennedy. I'm going to give you the short version. As Jim said, I just spent about an hour with your lovely audit committee. We went through everything in detail. With that said, if there's any questions or comments, please let me know. So what I'm going to do is walk through our executive summary, and then I will do our required communications. And if there's nothing else, I'll be on my way. So from an executive summary perspective, we have a 90-day filing deadline that we have to comply with here because we're a public authority. That means all of the audit work, the audit has to be issued by the end of March of 23. We were substantially complete with our test work on March 6th. It took a couple weeks to get the draft circulated and approved, but we met all of those filing deadlines. Our deliverables consisted of our independent auditor's report. That's the report on the financial statements, our report on controls and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. We also issued an examination on your investment compliance. We do a debt covenant agreed upon procedures, and we have our required communications, which I'm going to make to you folks today. From a summary perspective, unmodified opinions on the financial statements. That's the highest level of assurance I can give you, the board, that the financial statements are free of material errors. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control or compliance that we would report to you folks. Our report on investment compliance revealed no findings. We complied in all material respects with those requirements. And in terms of our debt covenants compliance, no issues noted. We were fully compliant with those requirements. So overall, a clean audit from BST. From a required communication standpoint, significant accounting policies we determined to be appropriate. We evaluated all those mechanisms in which you account for your financial data and determined those to be reasonable. No significant policy changes. No new accounting standards adopted except for the adoption of GASB 87, which was a lease standard. That's disclosed in the footnotes to the financial statements. No real impact on the bottom line. No unusual transactions or disagreements with management. We encountered no difficulties. Anything we asked for was given to us. Any requests we made were substantiated, and we received the full cooperation of all the members here at the authority. No consultations with other accountants. Significant transactions included the adoption of GASB 87, and there were no other significant issues discussed with management. We went through your accounting estimates, largely uncollectible receivables, depreciation, other post-employment, and your pension asset and liability. We determined those estimates to be reasonable, and the significant written communication between us and management consisted of our representation letter, a copy that was given to you folks. So overall, a very positive audit from our perspective. Things went smoothly, all the timelines were met, all the documents were filed with the ABO, and that was the quick version. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Bruce, did you have any?
No, I was very satisfied. There is obviously a very large document here, but what's valuable about this is not just the fact that it has the current and past year, past year and year before financial statements, but there's a lot of history and descriptive information on the authority, on what we do and how we do it. It's a great information piece for board members to have and to review annually to prepare your own questions for during the year. The summary presentation was excellent. I mean, I told them when we left, I said, as long as I keep hearing, no problem, no problem, no problem compliance, I'm happy, and it works out for me.
Yeah. And as I told the audit committee, if there were any issues, you would have heard from me well in advance of this meeting. We would have brought them immediately to the audit committee's attention for discussion and vetting. So as always, we speak with Jim throughout the year. As I told the audit committee, we work for you folks. If you have questions during the year, questions, comments, please don't hesitate to contact me. My contact information should be in the back here. If not, get it from Jim, and I'm happy to speak with any or all of you about your concerns as it relates to the authority.
Yes, as our auditor, of course, if you have an issue and you want to deal with it at the board, we have an audit committee, which is myself and Vince right now. But you have a fiduciary responsibility to the board and to the community. And if you have any questions you want to deal with directly with our auditor, please feel free.
Yes.
I just want to add quickly that one of the things that Brendan said in the audit committee meeting was that their experience working with the staff was very good relationship, great cooperation. All the information they needed was produced immediately. And I just think that says a lot about Jim, Geraldine Powers, another point person on the audit, and the whole staff in the accounting department just do an excellent job and use great judgment. So kudos.
Yeah, very true. That's great.
I'm not allowed to give compliments, so he's got to do it. But no news is good news. How's that?
Any other questions? Thank you. DHS infrastructure surveys, you, Jim, or who's doing that one?
Yes.
CISA has agreed to come in and do an infrastructure survey for us. Everybody has a packet. I don't really want to go into details on camera. They are the Division of Homeland Security. They're coming in beginning of July to do this for us. It's at no charge. And they'll have recommendations, which we'll probably have by September meeting. And if there's any questions, you can ask. I just don't want to get into a lot of detail of what they're actually doing for us. But it's a very good.
Yeah, is this something we initiated or they requested?
They offered and we took it. So,
Great.
because we've had a partnership with them for about 5 years now. It's something new they started doing this year, so we said yes, we'd be happy to have it done.
That's a strong positive reflection of the organization to stand up and say, yes, look at us and let us know. That's very good.
This will piggyback on the IBM.
Yes, I was just going to say
Yes.
And they don't charge us, right?
No, they
Yeah,
don't
so
charge
that's even
us.
better.
And any recommendation is non-binding. It's just a
Right. No, this is,
So-
congratulations. That's good.
You'll report back to us. We should do that in executive session.
in September. Yeah, that's
But anytime we get an opportunity for a set of expert eyes to take a look and give us an extra opinion, we always try to do it.
Because you don't want that on the air.
no, we don't
Yeah.
want to do that on there.
Any questions for Jim?
Very good, Jim.
Great. THM discussion.
Still, you're up.
Some of you would probably recall from last year, there was a tank up in Hanger Road that because of the THM level, when you averaged, we were 1 part per billion over. It subsided when the water temperature went down. However, take it away, Phil.
Yeah, so again, we thought it might be a good time just to brief an updated board on what trihalomethanes and disinfection byproducts are and talk about current situation that we have. Again, as Pat had just mentioned, about 6 months ago, we had a notice of violation at one site out in Oriskany beyond the county airport. So I just want to talk a little bit about what this regulation is. There have been 4 regulations this year that have come out from the state and the federal government. 2 state, 1 state and federal for perfluorinated compounds. There's an update to consumer confidence reporting. There's an update to cybersecurity that came out this year, and the lead and copper rule improvements are coming out this year. This is dealing with something that's 15 years old and originally was promulgated back in 1979. All right, so these are trihalomethanes. It is a group of 4 compounds that are called disinfection byproducts. What are disinfection products? They're formed when chlorine reacts with organic matter in the water. They are a function of time and temperature. So they are worse when the temperature is warmest, so typically in the summer, and over time. So the water is produced at the treatment plant, takes hours or weeks to get to places in the distribution system. The older that water is, which is typically in the distal parts of the system, the higher those values can be. The maximum level is set at 80 parts per billion or micrograms per liter, and that's as a running annual average. So we take these samples quarterly, we average those 4 quarters, we have to be under 80. EPA has identified the best available technology is GAC or carbon. The board approved a move to this probably a dozen or so years ago. In 2023, it's going to cost us $936,000 to change out our carbon. Just for some background, back in 2012, it was around $900,000. In the interim, we had some savings that we found by looking at different carbon technologies, but those costs are creeping back up. And with the new regulations for the perfluorinated compounds, we expect these numbers to only get higher as supply chain gets short going forward. So how does it work? It removes the organics from the water before we add the chlorine. So we don't have a chance to form those disinfection byproducts because we're removing the precursors.
So you want to just explain what we do when you say organics? We're talking about leaves, vegetation.
Sure. So organics are essentially what give color to the water. There are carbon materials in the water. So our watershed is 90% forested. There's a lot of leaf matter and organics and humic and fulvic acids. Those all can react with the chlorine to form these byproducts. So for the first 8 or 9 years up until 2021, what we would do is change our carbon out in July, we'd sample in August, and we'd essentially drop those numbers to 0. Okay? That was when the water was warmest. Those were our values were the highest. We changed those out. Those numbers would drop down to near 0, and we were compliant. But the numbers were higher in our November and in May. So talking with a few people in the water sector and just some intuition would tell you that, well, if we split our changeouts and we did 2 filters in April and 2 in July, then we would lower our May quarter, we would lower our August quarter, and it would be more balanced throughout the year. So I had some graphics. I was just going to show you historically how we were doing. What you would see is that in August, these numbers would drop to near 0. The organics removal would be down to around 0.1. So when we did these changeouts in April and August in 21 and 22, obviously the August values are going to come up a little and the May values came down a little, but overall over the course of a year, that wasn't able to balance out the levels. There's only one specific area where there's an issue. It is, again, in the Hanger Road pump station in the most distal part of the system. We've done some surveillance sampling of these trihalomethanes in the area. We know that it's isolated to that area. So we're working with the Department of Health to try to we have to do a notification. We would like to isolate it just to that area. The engineering department has been able to identify where we would send those notices out. We have to do that by the end of the month. We wanted to brief the board on that. We've also had some internal discussions about what we can do either in the distribution system in the short term, either bubbler or aeration systems, or looking at moving water faster over time. And of course, we also have some long-term capital options as well. But the important thing I think to remember is that we're going back to all 4 filters being changed out this July. Obviously, the split changeouts are not effective for us. So we expect our numbers in August to again be near 0. We're doing some increased monitoring just to kind of watch that over time. And, going forward, we're talking with some water sector experts to try to figure out, we really should be, for $1 million a year, we really should be getting a little more bang for our buck with the carbon. So perhaps it's time to step back and reevaluate the way that we treat organics going forward. Of course, right, there's some costs that have to be considered with that too, but we thought it'd be good to brief the board on where we are with this situation and how we plan to move forward. I'll take any questions if you want. Of course, if you want to stop by and talk after to I'll be here.
Hasn't the airport always been an issue? I mean, the way the tank was installed and the way the water flowed, I mean, why are do we have in the capital program anything to rectify that? And I know at one
It was
time,
considered last time around, it would have driven the bond issue up to about $18 million. So it was a project that was kind of just put off a little bit. So I thought maybe engineering wise, we could do a workaround, which is what Phil's working on.
If you look at historically, right, this is our highest site. We have 8 sites in the distribution system. This is our highest one. Again, the level has to be below 80. We've been around 70. Okay, so we were pretty comfortable. But in these last 2 years with the split swap outs, it's just jumped up a little bit. So the limit's 80, we're at 83.
Yeah.
So we'll have to issue the notice, but we think operationally going back to the 4 filter swap out will help us.
The good news too is that last time this happened, they made us do a system-wide notification. Generated a lot of phone calls from people that were not even remotely affected by this.
No.
This time around, the health department has been working. Phil's been kind of working very closely with them to limit the amount of notification that we need to do, so that we're not scaring some people unnecessarily. And the other thing too that I'm sure Phil would touch on if he still had his PowerPoint going. This kind of an issue only poses a slightly elevated health risk over a lifetime of exposure of very high levels. So these minor excursions that we've had really don't pose any long-term consequences for anybody.
Well, Pat, to further answer Vince's question,
Yeah.
what was it, 19 million for us to replace? We dropped it
a large project.
down to 9 million.
Yeah. It was a very large project.
So the capital plan addresses this in a different way. Vince, we know what we have to do eventually.
Right.
And what we really have to do, Pat, is get together with Tony, because this really
Right.
deals, that part of the system is really the county.
yeah.
It's all going to them. So maybe we could, get some assistance on that.
Issue forever.
Yeah. And it was an inherited system, the size of the tanks.
All of our issues are forever, Vince. All of our issues are forever.
This is one that's really been.
Remains.
Well, in the old days too, when you were designing a tank, the bigger the better, the more fire protection you have, etc. There was less consideration given to some of these water quality issues where you want to generate faster turnover, keep the age of the water down a little bit. If we were building that tank today, it'd probably be designed very differently and a bit smaller so that the water wouldn't age so much. But it's something we inherited, and it's a problem we've been dealing with.
Right, so that system, right, was designed for fire flows and for the county airport, and those days are gone, so. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Finance report, Jim. Oh, did I forget something? Oh, the new policy on the rights of employees, which is in your back.
Our relatively new, I got to stop saying new personnel director because eventually she's not new. Sandra Dare brought something to our attention that the New York State, in its infinite wisdom, has foisted upon us. So that's the one, right?
On December 9th, Governor Hochul signed a law that expanded protections for breastfeeding mothers. The law went into effect on June 7th, 2023. The law required employers to adopt written policy regarding the lactation rights, and the policy had to be developed by the New York State Department of Labor. They developed the policy that is the model policy you see in front of you. So we're gonna adopt the model policy.
Any questions?
Are we doing our own lactation room or are we combining with the city?
I have not discussed that with them. Whenever there is a request, should we get one, my intentions were actually to use our break room. We don't have to have a designated room. There are certain requirements that have to be met for the room to be used, but you don't have to have like a dedicated space that's available, 24/7. Just when the request is made, you have to make a place available.
You might want to check with Utica to see if they're doing anything else in the building.
It might be. But if I understand correctly, Sandra, it has to have running water, but it can't be a bath.
It has to be, yes, it has to be near, proximity to running water, but our current break room would meet all the requirements. We can make that available, have a little lock inside, have a schedule, because the person does have to provide a schedule when it's gonna happen, and the break room, would just be close to other employees during those times. So we do have a way to meet the requirements, immediately if somebody requests.
Okay. I was just thinking.
Yeah. But it is mandated by the state. The language is fairly mandatory. Rather than writing our own, Sandra just chose to adopt the policy that the state put together. So that's what's in front of you now.
Someone move it for approval. Thanks, Bruce. A second. Rich, thanks. Any further questions, discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Now you, Jim.
Your binder is our monthly report for the month ending May 31st. Highlights. Consumption is down almost 9%, which is pretty substantial. A big portion of that is Cree. Cree is, Wolfspeed, is down probably half of that. So we're investigating that. We have some suspicion that they're recycling water now. So we're going to work on verifying that. So that is a big portion of why we're down so much. But we're looking at some other accounts as well. It seems like everyone is down. So haven't used water like we anticipated. So it's kind of not a shock, but surprising to us, at least over this last month, because it took a big drop past month. And revenue, likewise, revenue is down compared to our budget. So we're down $600,000 for the year, which is about $30,000 less than last year. But we need to bring that back up. However, cash flow is still good because we've cut some of our expenses, or at least we're not paying out as much. So we have a healthy cash flow going forward. But again, the consumption and the revenue is a concern to us.
Jim, the greenhouse on Herkimer Road, are they way down?
Have to, what's the name of them?
I think it's under Breakwater Farm.
Yes, right. And any idea offhand? We can look at it. I'll write it down. Breakwater?
I will say too that we did meet internally to look at the budget, and we've identified between $500,000 and $700,000 worth of cuts within the current operating year that we could institute if the cash flow situation begins to deteriorate further. So we are poised to deal with this if it stays at this level and stays flat. So we are preparing to adjust the budget and reduce spending.
Wolfspeed's only a phone call away. I mean,
Yeah,
can we find out?
we're going to, yeah.
Yeah.
Ann and I are going to set a call up. There's a gentleman up there, Wayne Morris, that we talked to. And they were using around 700,000 gallons a day for quite a while. After they finished the tooling process last year, it seems now it's tailed off. I think when Jim and Geraldine and others looked at it, they're down to now around 380,000 gallons a day instead of 700,000. So it could be recycling. It could be they've had an interruption in production. So we're going to have to find that out, especially as next month we're going to start gearing up to start drafting next year's budget. So to get a good budget estimate, we're going to really need to know what their plans are moving forward.
Anything else, Jim? Any questions for Jim? Thank you. Pat?
We've had a pretty busy month, but some of that will be deferred for executive session. The only thing I really would like to cover right now is just the situation with Hinckley Reservoir. If anybody's been up there, you'll notice it's kind of low. Bruce noticed it the other day and contacted me. It's been running low. We obviously had some dry weather. They were following the operating diagram for a while, and it was dropping quickly. I will say, though, that we have a pretty good relationship, I think, so far with the new people from Canals. Dan Falzinski and I had a good chat with them. They voluntarily made cutbacks. Right now, they're running the release rate at the absolute minimum of 200 CFS. And over the last 4 or 5 days, the inflows have been above 500, closer to 700 CFS. So we've actually gained back a little more than a foot over the last 7 or 8 days or so. However, we're still running right now about 7 feet below average, which is better because 11 days ago it was more than 9 feet below average. And then there's a trigger level that activates a communication protocol that's been put in place as a part of our out-of-court settlement. That trigger level got hit several weeks ago. We've been doing weekly calls with them. Every Friday morning we get on the phone with them. But the elevation trigger, we're only now 2.5 feet below it. It was closer to 6.5 feet. So we've picked up almost 4 feet on the elevation trigger, only because as the summer goes on, the level naturally drops anyway. So we're closing in on that elevation trigger. Things will begin to equalize over the summer, but we certainly could use a little more rain. But I just wanted to let you all know that we're watching it carefully. We are in communication with the Canal Corp, and they've been very good about making cutbacks to preserve the water level. So we just have to wait and see, but everything that can be done is being done right now. So, and then I'll defer the rest to executive session.
Any questions for Pat? Any old business? Any new business? We need a motion to go into executive session to discuss possible litigation as well as bargaining agreement. We have first, seconds, and thirds. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you.